Hello and welcome back to PSY-POD, the podcast about nothing, the podcast where we bring local people for local vibes, but sometimes international vibes, sometimes unifying vibes. Same energy, you'll get the point when we start. Anyways, sir, if you could kindly look into the camera and say hello to our local and international fans.
Hi everyone, my name is Gaurav Ray and I am the United Nations Resident Coordinator based in Thimphu, Bhutan, and I just arrived 5 months back and good to be here.
Okay, we'll get into all that and more when we start, because live from Juno Studios, PSY-POD starts now.
PSY-POD, PSY-POD, PSY-POD.
Okay, before we start, you must be wondering, why do I look like I'm about to read English news at 9 p.m? Well, that's beside the point. I have a question for you instead. Are you abroad? Have you studied abroad, back to Bhutan and wanting to go abroad again? Have you been in Bhutan your whole life and now considering to study abroad? Do you live alone? Do you have an open mind? If all these questions are going through your head, then this episode is sponsored by Global Reach, which might be able to answer them. Global Reach is Bhutan's first and oldest education consultancy firm. Yes, they've been doing it since 2004, the year probably most of you were not even born. You were probably in your past life as a goat grazing the fields of Laya. Speaking of goat, Global Reach is the goat of sending Bhutanese kids to study abroad. Global Reach has certified counselors which will help you with the entire process, which means they are not just about putting you in an airplane and the see ya method. They'll help you with more things such as bank account setup, health insurance, and also included the air ticketing. And with connections with over 40 universities in Australia, your education opportunities are endless. And not only in Australia, they'll also help you connect with places in New Zealand, Canada, and even the US, America. So if you have dreams of studying abroad, just like the Honda guy dreams of picking up a foreigner, then Global Reach just might be your best wingman. Yes. Global Reach, a trusted name, a trusted open mind. Now, back to the episode.
Okay, we're back, and before we begin, like always, give a big shout out to DOMCIIP for supporting this podcast. We appreciate your support, and also if you can kindly look up, sir. Right now we don't see anything, but in post-production there'll be names floating above. All these names are kind supporters, members of our channel, our podheads, which I call it because it's the podcast, and we have podheads who support this podcast. So thank you so much for supporting this podcast. If you want to be a podhead, you can check the link in the description or press the join button, and you get perks such as shoutouts like these, see, like this, name shoutouts like that, and also early releases, member only posts, and also badges when you comment, so you can know that you are a member, and then also the appreciation of my heart, and you'll be directly supporting this podcast. That's why we get coffee and the lights are on. Thank you. And you can also upgrade your plan and become a pro version of a podhead and become a podhead pro like these guys again, sir. Now more faces have appeared in the sky.
Nice.
So shout out to Rabsel, Lhendup, Rinzin, Kukumbu Tshomo, Tanin Poops, Elo Bello, Norbu Digital, Karma Zimba, Pema Sangey, and Susan B. You are a Podhead Pro. Thank you so much for upgrading your plan to higher tier. You get the same perks as everything else, but now bigger, better shoutouts like that. So if you want to be a Podhead Pro, check the link in the description or upgrade your plan by going to the settings. Thank you so much. All right, we shall begin. So just a small touch up on how we got here today. We have a common friend, Leighton, who said that Sir would be interested to come on the podcast and talk about the UN's role here in Bhutan, and also wanted to connect with the youth. So me, as an open-minded person, and wanted to diversify my guests, I said, okay. So we'll talk about what the UN actually does, and also what did they do in Bhutan, and why their interests might lie with you guys. Find out. Okay, sir. So simple question. Then we'll go a little bit more details on there. What does the UN actually do for someone who has no idea what the UN does? How about that?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me again. The United Nations, a lot of people read about the UN, and when you talk to someone in the street, they kind of think the UN as the logo of the UN. It is an organization with a framework to make sure that the world is peaceful. We have humanity, we have, good livelihoods, and we maintain, dignity for people and work for people so that, they have a better life. So overall, the United Nations is a framework where we come together as member states. There are 193 member states. These are countries, including Bhutan.
Yes.
And the UN basically maintains peace, order, and harmony in the world. So, in a nutshell, this is what we do, and we are present in many countries around the world. And we've been there since 1945, when the UN Charter, the basic tenet of what we do, was developed. And this is where 51 countries signed up in 1945. Bhutan signed up late in the 1971. And so that's what the UN does. It makes sure that people are not left behind, people are progressing, there is development in countries. If there's a disaster, we help people to get back to normalcy, and we make sure that the world is much peaceful than what it is.
Okay, sir. Then what does the UN Resident Coordinator's Office do specifically in Bhutan? Like in each country, they have different agendas. What are you guys doing in Bhutan?
Yeah, so great. I think it provides me an opportunity to demystify a bit what the UN does as a whole. So I am called the Resident Coordinator, and I am the representative of the head of the UN, the Secretary General, and I am his voice in the country, which means I kind of lead the Secretariat of the United Nations. So we have the United Nations Secretariat, and then we have implementing partners.
Okay.
So in Bhutan, I lead the UN agencies in terms of its coordination, in terms of convening people and making sure that the ideas that we have are shared ideas. And we are here basically to support the government's development journey in terms of looking at, making sure that Bhutan progresses in its development journey, and we are part and parcel of that support system that we bring in technical expertise. We try to help the country and the government in making sure that policies are well defined and well implemented. We make sure that people have a better life, people are healthy, people are out of poverty, they are not hungry. So all these are framed under what is known as the Sustainable Development Goals. So my office looks after this whole process that the country is moving in a positive direction. We also have, as I mentioned, bodies like the implementing arm. My office doesn't implement much. We coordinate, we make sure that others are integrated, and our service that we provide is well aligned with the purpose that we are here. So we have around 6 agencies that are implementing programs in Bhutan, and maybe your viewers may know all of them. There is the United Nations Development Program. They do a lot of development work, policy change, employment, anything to do with the progress of a country. Then we have World Health Organization. They focus mainly on health and well-being, and they work closely with the Ministry of Health. And then we have World Food Program. So they are more focused on food security, food aid, livelihoods, etc. Then we have UNICEF. UNICEF is well known. You might have seen a lot of football stars wearing UNICEF jerseys. UNICEF is into mother and child care and making sure every child has a good future, and there's early childhood programs so that children have a better future. And then we have UNFPA, the Population Fund, and they look at a lot of work with reproductive health, etc. And FAO. FAO is Food and Agriculture Organization, which is also a long-term partner of the Royal Government of Bhutan. And they look at agriculture, agri-based industries, food systems, anything to do with agriculture, which is a mainstay in Bhutan in terms of the livelihoods. FAO works in those areas. So these are the 6 agencies that we have in Bhutan, and together we represent the whole UN system. So they are implementing programs through various ministries, various CSOs, NGOs that are implementing partner, and we make sure that we are aligned in what we do. As what dictates us how we support the government is we have a 5-year plan, and we call it the cooperation strategy or cooperation framework, and that is written and is a kind of a guiding document for us that, hey, we want to do this and this and this in the next 5 years. we agree with the government. The Ministry of Finance is our focal ministry. And we sit with them, and every year we check how we are doing. So this 5-year plan is valued at around 195 million US dollars, and every year we have an expenditure of around 30 to 35 million. And all these agencies that I mentioned together, we deliver on these cooperation framework outcomes.
Okay, so what's in terms of Bhutan's 5-year plan? What is something that you want to achieve, at least from representing UN?
Yeah, well, again, our cooperation framework is aligned with Bhutan's 13th 5-year plan.
Okay.
So whatever is mentioned in the 13th 5-year plan, we look at our mandate.
Where do you guys fit in?
Yes, we fit in the entire plan. There are these 4 areas of outcome that we do. One is economic development. So we fit in very well with economic development, and I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
Job creation, engagement with youth, making sure that, productivity is increased. So second is health and well-being.
Okay.
So the areas of health, to support the digitization of health, maybe to look at some new curative policies, etc. So that's the second outcome area that we work directly with the government of Bhutan. We also work in the area of environment management and sustainability, in terms of making sure that our programs are in green programs. Our programs are, when we have natural disasters, we are there to support. We do a lot of work which means risk reduction. And then the last area of where we fit in within the 13th 5-year plan is about the rule of law, or what we generally call is working with institutions like legal institutions or the civil service organization, to make sure policies are in place so that it's from paper to people, it's translated. That's where the UN comes into play, making sure that the good policies are implemented by supporting the government departments. So these are 4 broad areas where we work.
Okay.
And then it's about good engagement and making a difference in people's lives. If it has not impacted someone's life, then we see it as a hurdle. So we make sure that we reduce those barriers and make sure that we reach the people who are marginalized at times or are vulnerable. So that is where some of the indicators lie in terms of our work through the government system.
Okay. We can get into specifics.
Yeah.
But before we start, I would like to also, let's hear more about you, sir. Okay, how did you get to this position that you are, becoming the resident coordinator? You mentioned off camera that you were born in Australia, you lived in many countries. So let's hear a little bit about your own upbringing and your journey and how you got here.
Sure. Well, I was born in India, actually. So I was proudly packaged out of India. I was born in a beautiful city, the city of joy, called Calcutta.
Okay.
And which is not very far from Bhutan,
Yes.
Thimphu as well. And I was brought up in the neighborhood in Assam. So I did my primary and high school in Assam, in a place called Guwahati, which many of you relate, because I had Bhutanese friends when I grew up.
Oh, nice.
So I had a lot of connection with Bhutan while I was growing up. And then, of course, I did my master's in Thailand from an institute called Asian Institute of Technology.
Oh, okay, I know.
And then I started working in the area of disaster management with an affiliated agency called ADPC, Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, and happened to just move to Australia with my job and worked with the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, and went to missions to different countries like Bangladesh, Thailand, Afghanistan, Indonesia, responding to disasters and development work. And before coming to Bhutan, I was working in Bangladesh for 7 years.
Okay.
And then I applied to this resident coordinator's job, which is not very easy. You have to pass a battery of tests. It takes around a year to complete everything, and then you're in the pool of resident coordinators, and then you are allowed to apply to countries.
Okay.
And so I put up my hand for 3 countries, and I got selected for Bhutan. So that's how I took a very scenic route to come to Bhutan. And I'm happy that I'm in Bhutan, because the last 5 months that I've spent in Bhutan, it's been an amazing journey. And I compare many of these countries and Bhutan is really unique and remarkable in its own way. So I'm really blessed to be in Bhutan.
All right. But what made you want to pick Bhutan, one of those countries that you wanted to opt for? What about Bhutan kind of drew you in?
I think, as I mentioned, proximity and understanding of the culture and the life in Bhutan. I mean, I read about Bhutan a lot. You know, as we all talk about the gross national happiness, concept that was originated in Bhutan. Beyond GDP, there is satisfaction and happiness. That really, inspired me a bit in terms of, how do we get there? What is the spiritual connect? I think that was one of the interesting points that attracted me to apply for Bhutan. Plus, I saw Bhutan doing very well in its development journey. I was reading up before my interviews that Bhutan really did quite well in terms of its graduation from, a least developing country, or LCD, as we call it, to a medium to high income country. And that journey is remarkable because it's achieved it in a very short span of time. So I wanted to be part of that journey as well.
Okay.
And then look at the, beyond LCD, or least developing, or LDC. How can we take Bhutan to the next, next leap? So I think that also was something that I was thinking that it's going to be an interesting challenge to take up. The third reason, the whole connect of Bhutan in terms of its geopolitical or geolocation between, two majors, China and India, and, the way Bhutan has come up and maintains its identity. The monarchy, the government, the people. I think this kind of was very interesting to see how I can learn from Bhutan's experience in terms of making a better life, in terms of being more connected to oneself and reflective. I think that's also something personal that had a touch in terms of why Bhutan and why not some other country.
Okay, all right. So, before we move forward, you mentioned you went on missions for disaster management. Can you share a few stories? Like I mentioned, people like to hear stories. And I think since you mentioned you went to many countries and many missions, can you mention maybe one or two few stories, which we think was quite interesting for us to all hear?
Yeah, I think Asia Pacific offers. It's like we call it the supermarket of disasters.
Wow, okay. I've never heard that term.
I've experienced cyclones, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, and forest fires. In fact, I visited Bhutan 15 years back when there was a big forest fire in Bumtang in 2011-12.
Okay.
And then I was also here to run a community-based, readiness program.
Okay.
That time I was working with the Red Cross, and it was very interesting. But the stories that the most interesting ones are in Afghanistan and Bangladesh, maybe, because we have a constant, flow of disasters in Bangladesh, particularly. There was a particular cyclone that I remember, where we kind of were not prepared already, and the cyclone took a turn and it hit Bangladesh. We were thinking that it might go to India or Myanmar. So that really triggered an idea that I kind of got involved, known as anticipatory action, which means before the hazard hits the ground, how can we prepare in advance and what actions can we do to reduce the impact. So that was a wake-up call for me and for Bangladesh. And that program is an interesting program that we had to convince the government, because not many people like to invest before because they don't see the tangible outcomes, right?
Yes.
So we had to work very hard. I personally led a team in Bangladesh to convince not only the government but the communities, because no one wants to think about the bad stuff in life, right?
Yes.
Disasters are not positive, they are negative, right? So how can we turn it into positive and work with the people to make sure that before something happens, and if you have a forecast, then you can do a lot to minimize the impact later on. So that was an interesting, one thing I remember that we preached was a no regrets policy. Like even if the cyclone or the flood doesn't come to you, at least you got prepared and that it's in your blood and in your DNA. So that was one interesting, policy work that we did with the government of Bangladesh. But in Afghanistan, there was a very interesting program that we ran on health. Afghanistan is one of the few countries, including 1 or 2 countries in Africa, where polio showed up again. The world was working on polio eradication, and we had a very interesting program where we needed to be, immunizing children and communities, and access was a huge problem. You couldn't go from A to B without crossing another, point. And that time in Afghanistan, we had, the government had control of certain areas, and then there were armed groups that were controlling the areas, where we had to go. So it was a lot of negotiations. And there was an innovation that how could you use mobile technology to make sure that someone has been vaccinated, and then you go and do the geolocation of that household. And there was a very interesting concept, because the men in the family, they were, they were the face of the family. So, and then we understood that the grandmothers were actually the decision makers in the family. So that idea struck, and one of our colleagues said, why don't we use grandmothers to promote vaccination and to promote, that people, if they get vaccinated, they're immune and they're better off. So we tried this formula of getting grandmothers committees, and they kind of allowed us into the communities and gave us access. And they also talked to the armed groups that, no, we need to vaccinate our children. And that was a turning point of the whole vaccination campaign that was not working well. So again, the lesson that I learned from these 2 experiences is you need to be convinced yourself, and you need to be able to negotiate and place your idea in a way that it is understood by decision makers. A lot of people just reject your idea, but how you place it, how you communicate, and how you carry that forward is extremely important in our job. So anyone who's trying to get into the UN or the humanitarian work, they need good communication and convincing abilities, so that the most complicated stuff on vaccine and all that has to be broken down into easily understandable, digestible language,
Okay, you need to be a good master manipulator, it seems like.
A facilitator.
I like that word better. But actually, it seems like it comes with a lot of diplomacy.
True.
Would you say?
Yeah.
So I think just by hearing a few stories, I think you could apply that in real life as well.
Yeah.
Whether it be, let's say, impending doom is coming, how to prepare yourself for that, how to try to convince somebody an idea for the greater good.
Yeah.
So I think it comes with that territories. But you think if you've applied it, sir, in your own life, this kind of what kind of the works that you've done it? Have you applied in your own personal life? Like, let's say your son's angry, how do I minimize the damage?
Yes, I think it's in my DNA now, I believe. I'm not sure. I think I have it in my DNA to break the problem into smaller parts. And I believe in the concept of this thing called subsidiarity, which means, you address the problem at the root cause of the problem rather than escalate that to somewhere else. Like, if in the family, just breaking it down to the basic family structure. If my son or someone else in the family has a problem, and that problem doesn't relate to me, but it relates to another member of the family, then you take that problem to that root cause rather than escalating it higher, because anyone who has to solve the problem has to go down to that path. So the best way to solve the problem is by the individual with the other one. But of course, problems are not easy. They're always complicated. There's so many interacting factors. So yes, I think coming back to your question, I do apply some of these lessons that I've picked through experience. And I'm mindful of that. And it's good for people to reflect that how can I use this principle? For example, in the UN, we practice a principle of leaving no one behind. How can I apply that principle in my day-to-day life? Am I doing things that is addressing that principle? So yeah, I think for 25 years I've worked in this line of work. I think it molds us in a way to think about the principles of, confidentiality, a principle of, neutrality, for example, or impartiality. These are principles that form you and shape you, because the work we do is on face value, it looks very simple. You're helping others so that they can, grow and they can have a better life. But behind that, there's a lot of complexities. Like it's human. There's so many things that you have to take into consideration. But I think if you, self-reflect, I think it helps at times. Diplomacy is something that we all should practice, but again, diplomacy doesn't mean that, we remain silent all the time. It also sometimes means we have to speak out. We have to advocate for people who don't have a voice or whose voice are not heard. So I think this line of work helps us to improve as a human being as well.
Okay.
I feel. That's a point that I think as a person I have really improved. I feel, and maybe others would be able to judge, but I feel you reflect and you also take feedback. In our line of work, it's very important to not go with a prescription that every problem has one solution or whatever, but to listen and to understand and reflect and then say something that is valuable.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well put,
basic
well put,
stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go a little bit back into Bhutan. So right now, hearing a little bit about what you mentioned about UN's work and your work as well. So you mentioned about sustainable development goals. And I think that also falls in line with our country's policy of GNH, which you just mentioned. So what is happiness to you, sir?
Okay. I just wanted to re-quote. When you said it reminded me of His Majesty's take on the UN as well. He also mentioned a few, some time back, that GNH, the whole principle of gross national happiness and the sustainable development goals are, the two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
In fact, the amazing thing that I have seen in Bhutan is, we didn't have to localize the SDGs. They were already part and parcel of your DNA.
Okay.
That GNH talked about so many things that are related to sustainable development.
Yes.
Yeah, so coming back to what you said, we are doing quite well. Bhutan is doing quite well in terms of the sustainable development. And it's definitely connected to the gross national happiness, that approach and concept. I think there are 17 goals, as we know. I mean, people might know this is the wheel that I'm wearing here.
Okay.
These are the 17 goals.
Okay.
And Bhutan is doing remarkably well in most of the goals. Except for one or two, there is a little bit of push that is required because, you can't do everything equally well,
Yes, sure.
You have certain, high marks and medium. So I think the areas that I think the UN is supporting the government of Bhutan is in reducing inequality, producing, economic growth and sustainability in the jobs. Looking at youth engagement, I think we could do much better in terms of getting, because, we all know there is this whole out-migration that we are grappling with in the country. So how we can retain talent and how we can create interesting jobs for people to engage.
Yes.
Then there is this whole confidence building and competence building, You can build the competencies, but if you don't have a job market to apply those, then most of our programs and projects are focused on making sure there is a market. So there's employability and then there's entrepreneurship that is encouraged.
Okay.
So the UN is working on these areas. And there are some statistics that if you're interested, I can throw them, but I think the principle behind what we are doing is job creation, skills development. We are looking at providing legal aid to people who can't get it normally, so their voice represented. We have programs that deal with entrepreneurship, like, if you can employ more people and gainfully, and then they are part of the business and it has a market. Those are some basic things that we are doing. We are engaging a lot of the youth for consultations. Youth are just not beneficiaries. They are also consulted in climate change. Bhutan is unfortunately recipient of the impacts of climate change. We are a carbon neutral or negative country, yet we see the occurrence of hydrometeorological disasters like floods, others. But again, how to manage those? There's a lot of consultations with the youth that has been put into the nationally determined, consultations that we produce. So there's a lot of work happening within the sustainable development area.
Okay, so let's go into little specifics. You said you have some facts and figures you want to mention, sir. I would be happy to hear.
Sure. I think I would start with the job sector and skills and opportunities. I'm just because numbers are something that can tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, okay.
Last year we just brought out a report recently, and it's available on our website if anyone's interested. UN supported programs, the programs done by the agencies. We actually touched amazingly 87,000 people through income generating activities, and over 2,200 people access digital learning, e-commerce, financing opportunities. We are looking at bringing new financing to the country. There are these traditional finance systems, but we are trying to also look at opportunities to bring new finance. And together with the Royal Government of Bhutan, we invested in an impact financing forum where we looked at investors coming in to invest in the brand Bhutan.
Okay.
So those kind of things, and we created around 1,700 jobs for mainly women entrepreneurs, and then we trained them in digital marketing. So these are some of the interesting figures with youth. I think a lot of consultations, as I mentioned, to develop policies. The voice of the youth is included in topics like substance abuse. I think with every society when they develop, there is a section of the youth who might go in paths where we need to bring the talent back. So there's a lot of consultation on minimizing substance abuse, etc. And within the schools, I think we have school programs. Upshift is a very interesting program that UNICEF runs in terms of making sure that all schools are, learning digitally, and also the monastic institutions. They are also given the opportunity to learn through digital methods. So they're not left behind. They're at speed with the rest of the world. Yeah, so these are some statistics that is come out from this main report that was published recently. And overall, I think we are offering a great service that 180,000 in total in Bhutan receiving some kind of benefit from the UN funds and programs, which are done through the government of Bhutan.
Okay, right. So just a little bit more detail we could talk about, like you said you want to talk about the youth problems. And I think there are like a lot of problems, substance abuse, one being mental health, other than that. But the one general problem which we're all seeing right now is the economic kind of conditions. Because I think some people are not either getting employed, or even if they're getting employed, they're not getting enough to maybe just hand to mouth, and then they are now moving more and more forward. So how do you think UN is going to help our government to tackle this problem, and what is your take on that?
I think it's a great question everyone is grappling with. The UN is here to support mainly initiatives that are endorsed by the government of Bhutan, particularly in managing talent inside the country. So we have programs in agriculture, programs in innovation, in digital technology. I think these programs have been piloted to some extent. This needs to be scaled up. So the UN is there to test some of these. There's also need for policy change or reform where the UN can add value. The question that I ask many a times myself, why would someone leave? Maybe it's because of economic reasons. Maybe it's because of a better life outside. So what do we do in terms of retaining the talent in the country? So I think, everyone is thinking about that. There are many solutions, stopgap measures that different departments within the government is doing. What the UN wants to support is, policy change and also looking at innovative programs and entrepreneurship. I mean, we do a lot, but I think the challenge is to scale them up once they are tested. Bhutan is a country where I think it's good to test things because we are lucky to have a smaller population. If something fails also, we can learn from that failure. So I think the UN's engagement in Bhutan is to make sure that through our programs of school programs of early childhood development, about innovation in digital technology. How do we from idea generation to market availability? I think that is something that is need to be looked at. I should quote here, I had the opportunity, a great opportunity to listen to His Majesty about the Gelefu Mindfulness City. I think that's one of the North Stars for Bhutan in terms of generating a concept and a city where, you will have economic development, with mindfulness built inside. So I think that is something that is going to be an interesting, program. For youth to be trained and capacitated. So we are also supporting in terms of the capacity development and the skill development. It's a constant process. So we work with the government, systems where there is need and gaps identified for, for example, I was in India recently, and I met a group of people who were learning how to negotiate once the WTO, the World Trade Organization, systems come into place in Bhutan. So these are the skills that people need, and the UN has a beautiful system called experts on demand. If we don't have that talent in the country and we want to really learn, we can request from our pool of experts to come to Bhutan and to train people in certain expertise areas which are not available readily. There might be people who are, having that expertise, but we can use the UN system to leverage that availability of resource, particularly in the capacity development area.
Okay. So right now, I think when you're talking, we can hear maybe some reasons and have some methods we can retain the talent. We can keep people here and make them more happy with the conditions. But last time when I was talking to a journalist, and it's a common question, like right now GMC, it might be a great reason for people to come back from wherever they're living, but GMC is still far in the future. If we're being optimistic, maybe 10 years, but if you're being realistic, maybe longer than that. So how do you think, in your humble opinion, or it may be in your hot take or controversial take, how do you think you could make people come back today?
Well, it's a challenging question. The whole country is grappling with that fact, right?
Yes.
With the UN, I think what we can do is create the opportunities of learning a skill, and we have to really look at the market beyond Bhutan as well. The economy of scale is where we have to look at producing unique value-added products or services that is not only meant for Bhutan but also in the neighborhood. We have India as a very big market.
Yes.
We have the Southeast Asia. So we need to think beyond the borders. I like to think two things that I try to preach or propose whenever I'm meeting young people is one is we called Bhutan to be a landlocked country, right?
Yes.
But we are also land linked. That concept of changing the vulnerability to a resilient approach is about we are linked with many other countries in the neighborhood through India, through other countries. So we have to go beyond our borders to look at a bigger market. I think that mind shift needs to happen. Plus, this whole without the box thinking. We've all heard out of the box thinking, but the box is there. So if we really want to transform and keep the talent, we have to get one or two big ideas which could be without the box thinking. I mean, with digital economy, with the whole innovation. I think we have the enabling ground. There is Startup Bhutan, there is Innovate Bhutan, there is also Bhutan Innovation Lab. A lot is happening in terms of grounding these ideas to look at scaling up. So we need to attract new investments also. This is where I think our office is also supporting in terms of looking at investors to come into Bhutan to look at issues that are developmental in nature, like looking at education, for example, looking at spirituality, for example. I think there are many avenues, but we really need a concrete plan to make sure that one or two things work. And of course, we need to talk to the youth and the younger generation, how they foresee that, that if they want to be in Bhutan, but I think, there are other factors that is creating the pull factor. So we need to reverse that. How do we reverse it? I think that's a little bit of a challenge, but also introspectively thinking what could work. And as an outsider currently, coming from the outside, I see Bhutan has a big potential in tourism. How do we innovate in tourism? How do we open newer areas for tourism? I know Bhutan has this whole, high impact, low volume. Yet within those balances, how do we create more value? Recently I was part of a opening of a zip line. Adventure sports. Thinking a little bit where we can add on to this whole tourism some other areas that could boost the tourism. That could be one area which is existing. Then looking at agri products. Bhutan has beautiful climate that can grow many other things, herbs and flowers. There's a lot of potential, but investment is required, and the market has to be beyond Bhutan. Otherwise, the scales and the scope becomes restricted. So I think we have to think in those lines. The region is there to get advantage from Bhutan, and how Bhutan can add value to existing things. That is something that is in the line of my thinking, that we have to figure out one or two big ticket items that can attract. But I'm amazed to see that the education, the foundational education, and the awareness level of any young Bhutanese is very high. That's why they're very lucrative for other markets, other employers. And this is something that we need to work on in terms of how do we take advantage of that benefit of foundational education and good understanding.
Okay, so right now, following your point right now, I just feel like in terms of education, like since I was born and raised here, I can feel like this was the same point which I think Dashu Benji and Michael Rutland also said, is that I think we're educating our citizens to work abroad, because the skills we have here, even when I was in college, I went to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and I went with my parents supporting me to get there. But when I went there was a university where a lot of Bhutanese went. I used to meet a lot of Bhutanese there because it was a university linked with the government Ministry of Education, and they sent all the toppers over there. And what I learned is half of them, when they came back, there was no jobs ready for them. So they were capable and competent enough to go there and study and get the degree, but when they came back, the government was not equipped in order to employ them. So now what do you do next? Now either you find somewhere to work here or you go abroad. So that's one major issue. I think we have to find our way. Either we have to change the education so then we can keep whatever we teach so we can come back here, or we have to find a way that there's some opportunities in employment for them to use their skills that they've learned abroad there. So I think that's one thing I can feel, at least a person who's been brought up here. And then I'll give you a few other hot takes I have. Okay, you can agree or disagree, up to you. Okay, so my first hot take, I would say, to retain people or come back. Now the reason why so many people go there is obviously because of economy, simple reason, and then the quality of lifestyle. Like over here, if you want to go zip lining, it just came last week. Okay, there was no opportunity. There's no bungee jumping. There's no skyscrapers. So people want to go to see the world. So then when people go to see the world and they see their friends' Instagram stories and them living a good life abroad, they're like, I want to be there. I'm missing out. Why? I'm stuck here in the mountain. So there's a FOMO factor, I call it. The FOMO factor is always there. So I think you should bring the FOMO factor for them from here. If something is really happening in Thimphu and Bhutan, we're like, wait, what am I doing here? Exactly. I should be in Bhutan. And I think another great way, which I think the government and maybe some people are not looking at the angle, which recently they are, is the creative economy.
Yes.
Because I am part of the creative economy, and you mentioned earlier about the digital economy as well. So I am right now fully living my life because of the creative and digital economy.
Absolutely.
But there are lots of hurdles that we'll go through. Like for example, I'll give you a little touch. I get most of my revenue from YouTube earnings. And in order for me to monetize my channel, I cannot keep my channel YouTube in Bhutan. Because Bhutan is not part of the YouTube partnership program.
Right.
Because obviously, I don't blame them. They don't see us as a maybe a area where it will affect their earnings. It will help them benefit. Understand capitalistic world, what to do, we live there. Same reason why PayPal is not can be operated here, because of our server issue is going to outweigh the return on investment for them. We get it. So in order for me to get the channel fixed up, I have to register my channel under another country. So whether it be India, US, Australia, whatever. I lived in Japan for a bit, so I kept it in Japan. Now in order to monetize my channel, I need to get a certain level of hours and some views in order for the channel to be eligible for the partnership program. Right. Okay, now country I've manipulated. I've changed it to another country, proxy country. Now in order to get the channel back, I need to get a PIN code, which YouTube emails it through post.
Right.
No, not email, sorry, mails it through post. You physically open it, punch in the code, and you get it through. Now, if you're any country other than Bhutan, 5 days, 2 weeks, you get the code.
Right.
For me, it took me 6 months.
Okay.
And most creators in Bhutan right now are restricted because of that, because they need to find those loopholes and get through them. Now, if there was some areas where it was easier, another story. Now, another part is TikTok. TikTok has become a boom in Bhutan. It's crazy. You will not imagine. It's like a person who lives in the east, in a hut. He's never seen even urban life in Thimphu. He's earning lakhs upon income because he goes on TikTok live and he has an audience who's living in Australia or abroad, and they love him and they're throwing him gifts. Now, in order for that person to, withdraw the money, he needs PayPal. But the PayPal's on Bhutan. So he finds a friend who lives in Australia, and that friend opens a PayPal account, and he withdraws the money, and then he remits it back to Bhutan. See, people in the east who's raising cows have figured out a way to do that, but the government is completely blind. They have no idea what's happening. The creative economy, if you measure it, I think it must be, now this is a random figure, okay, it might be at least worth maybe $10 to $100 million, at least in Bhutan itself, because there's so many creators now emerging, but using these loopholes.
Right.
But most people don't understand it. So now if the government can look at the creative economy and say, hey, how about we invest this X amount of money, we train this amount of people, we make the barriers in order to become a creative person easier, then maybe we can boost the economy and people want to stay here. Because some people who have stayed here, I've looked at them, who's part of the creative economy, is like, yeah, I don't need to go to Australia if I want, because if I go there and work blue-collar jobs, I can make the money. But over here, I'm doing a good job and I'm in the comfort, I have the security, I have the peace of mind. So people, that's one reason why people are staying. And maybe that is one area of interest you can look at. Because another example I can give is when I was...
But let me pause you 1 second. I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of the enabling environment that is required for creative economy to flourish.
Yes.
Has to be somehow generated. Otherwise, you continue to have those, people will find ways to figure out how they will bring back money to Bhutan. But if there was this enabling environment of, a culture of investment where you can see the returns, I think that's important. And this is where I think the UN looks at, the transformation is not auto, like it cannot have overnight, but at least thinking in those lines is extremely important. And someone recently also told me the fact that the creative economy, the creativity and the artists that are here in Bhutan, they're of very high caliber. The enabling environment, if it comes to Bhutan, it will work miracles, and it can do much better. So I'll take that point from you in terms of trying to look at ways to reform the system or inject a little bit of new thinking, new wave of thinking, because I think the new Bhutan that we want to see is of this nature, that everyone can thrive in this economy. So back to you. You were saying something
this
else.
Last point, which was like, I've said this in the podcast before, but I think it needs to be reinforced. It's just my hot take, like I said, my opinion. So in 1990s, I think it was early 90s, Jurassic Park. Have you heard that film?
Yes,
it came out. It made like $2 billion. And then this topic came up in the Korean parliament. One of the, I think, members of parliament brought it up and said, in order for us to generate that much level of income into our country, $2 billion, right now our top industry is automotives. And let's say Hyundai is the top company there. They say Hyundai needs to make 2 million cars in order to make that money the same that one production of film made. So they said, how about we pivot our our economic policies and try to invest in the creative industry. So they started putting a little bit more money. I'm not sure of the figures. Then the K-dramas came, the K-pop industry came. In 10 years, they just took the world by storm.
I mean, I've seen this transformation happening not only in Korea.
Yeah.
Outside Korea, the influence has been so much
Yes, influence
that
industries.
their change or transformation has impacted rest of the world.
Yes.
Like we are looking at Korean noodles or Korean made garments.
Yes.
So the fashion industry has been transformed. The television industry, the dramas, Korean dramas have become very popular.
Yes, yes.
So it has a ripple effect as well.
Yes. So I always feel like if they can implement, I'm not saying we can go to the same heights, but it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I think definitely there's room for development and improvement. But I think Bhutan also has to, I mean, the country itself and the government and the policymakers have to look at these issues. Otherwise, it's a little bit frustrating, as you mentioned, right?
Yes,
in terms of getting your business recognized in the country that you reside in.
Yes.
Because it's a global world, it's an open world. You could be anywhere and doing this podcast as well.
Yes.
Where I think I just wanted to add and piggyback on your idea, where the UN is helpful is in looking at this transformative change processes that, I mean, we do work with most of the ministries. We look at employability and skills that are required. I think the takeaway from what you mentioned, the what was it?
Hot take.
Hot takes. I think what I take back from your hot takes is, we need to play an active role in mobilizing this change of mindset in terms of opportunities which are there, but due to some, issues on policy matters or new thinking, it has to be somehow ingrained into the system. So I think that there needs a little bit of systems change.
Yes.
I feel. Yeah.
Yes, but we'll find out if it happens. And then my final, most controversial take is this, okay? Agriculture industry, we can thrive on it. How about we legalize cannabis? We just grow a lot of farms. Thailand has benefited immensely. You might think it's a joke, but they benefit immensely by allowing these laws to be allowed. A lot of remote areas have started a lot of cannabis farms. They've made products because cannabis doesn't only mean THC, it means also CBD, which can help in epilepsy treatment in terms of therapies and all that stuff. And it can boost an environment. And also, what was it? And then maybe you could say the side effects Thailand maybe are facing is they're saying the people are too lazy now. Now they're not working. We're already lazy. Bhutanese are already lazy embeddedly. Maybe this could help in agriculture environment. So I just want to know, what do you think about that, sir?
I've never thought on those lines, and personally speaking, I'm not too sure because there is a good side, a bad side, there is a different side. So yeah, I won't be able to say much about this, but I mean, every trade, every product has to be looked at from a holistic point of view, how the country would benefit or there will be harm to the livelihoods, etc. So, for example, Afghanistan used to grow a lot of poppy,
Okay.
and they used to almost, the whole export used to happen. But later on, what happened, a lot of people got addicted to it, and that did more harm than good. So when you look at these kind of issues and decisions, I think you have to be a bit sensitive to how the overall development on Bhutan. We talked about substance abuse a while back.
Yes.
There is a chance if the regulations and the laws are not well built around certain aspects, then there is a chance of being a bit on the negative side at times.
Okay,
but again, I mean, these are things that we need to grapple. We need to understand the cost benefit as well as the impact that it will have on the overall society that we are living in.
Okay, but at least in my opinion, I think marijuana in terms of a drug class, I think is in the lowest class. They say it's a gateway drug, but it's now legalized in so many states and countries around the world. But that's not the conversation. And in terms of health, if we can go back to it, I know there's a lot of problem with pills and all substance abuse in the country, which is very alarming and concerning. But I think the number one killer is alcohol. And I think our tolerance to alcohol in Bhutan is very high. We normalize it so much. Like I think, like up until 5 years ago, there used to be breathalyzer tests everywhere. But I think for some reason, this is my opinion, I think budget ran out. I think there wasn't enough to test everybody. And now literally drunk driving is almost rampant every day. Like every weekend, if I'm going home, I always see, it's every other weekend, it's not every weekend, I see someone has had a serious car accident in the middle of the highway. And I think when you think about cannabis, like we're going back to it, sorry to mention it again, but then I think alcohol kills and affects more lives than anything, at least in Bhutan, and we don't take it as seriously and we classify everything else as worse. So do you think UN can play a role in that way?
Of course, we are already, with our whole substance abuse programs, we are collaborating with the polices. The root cause of a lot of this domestic violence that also is emerging the root cause is alcohol as well. So I think there are programs that, awareness programs plus programs of peer-to-peer support. Those are part and parcel of our development programs, which has a real impact on the society. So we definitely play a role in reducing or, doing away with substance abuse, and also how to deal with the people who are impacted by it. I think there's a lot of psychosocial support that is required. The UN does those kind of programs in our child-friendly environments. We work together with other, non-government organizations to make sure that the good practices where we've seen success are also brought to Bhutan in terms of, culturally adapting that to Bhutan's lifestyle, and making sure that people are aware of the negative impacts of these substances. So definitely the UN plays a major role. In fact, in one of our principles of programming of making sure that everyone benefits from the good that the country has, and also make sure that we understand what is not good for the society. So individuals need to make decisions based on the environment they live in. So a lot of strength, understanding from the early childhood development that, is important, and we do play a role in this through WHO, through UNICEF, through UNDP. Most of our programs have this component whenever we're doing a community-driven approach. Yeah.
Okay, sir. All right, I'm just looking at the time. So is there anything you want to talk about which we have not already discussed, sir?
Yeah, just also checking. I think, I just wanted to also give a message that, the UN is here, the United Nations is here to support, to make sure that we are relevant, that we are addressing the issues that Bhutan as a country is facing. With the graduation, there will be different challenges for Bhutan.
Okay.
There will be less concessional loans. There might be less aid and more, investments on trade and investment. So we as a UN, we are also reforming ourselves. When we are in a country for so many years, in Bhutan, we've been more than 50 years.
Yes.
So how is our offer changing with the changing circumstances in Bhutan?
Okay.
That is something that we reflect as well in terms of the demand that the country has in terms of our services that are beneficial to the government as well as to the people. So there, we are kind of parallelly, rethinking, re-engineering ourselves to be more relevant to the needs of the society. Okay. The points that you mentioned are truly interesting to look at, how we formulate a culture where acceptance as well as ability to perform to the highest level is there, and that's where I think we need to make groundbreaking solutions in looking at how do we make a difference in a person's life. Maybe with education, with tourism, with energy diversification. We didn't talk about solarization. We are so happy to see that Bhutan has hydroelectric power, which is quite green in terms of its production. But how do we diversify? How do we diversify in agriculture? How do we bring in value-added, value chain products? I think those are the big opportunities, but you need investment. So we are also trying to see how we can mobilize a ecosystem where we bring in new investors. And in the last few conferences that I have attended, the brand Bhutan is quite a big brand. The whole investment rules and regulations are quite relaxed to attract investment. But again, if I was an investor, I would see what profits can I make? How can I look at bottom lines as well as societal development? I think Bhutan offers this whole environment where it's more attractive for benefit businesses. Like, it does not only benefit the company but also benefits the community. So I mean, with the UN system, I would like to work more with the private sector in the coming years to see how we can involve private sector in causes that are having a positive impact on the society. So and then of course climate change is a big pressure. It's happening as we speak. I mean, there are a lot of impacts, and then of course disaster risk reduction. We had an earthquake just day before yesterday, and how did we react? How did we communicate? How did we the damage and loss reports that are coming in? How quickly can we bounce back? We are very thankful that and lucky that it was not a very big one. It's a moderate. But we are sitting on a seismic active zone. So we need to think about prosperity in a way that we think about the practical things in life. So we are here to support and help. And our programs and funds that are there, they're also aligned to make sure that we are accompanying the government of Bhutan in the development journey, as we have done in the last 50 years. We want to reinvent ourselves as well to make sure that we continue to be relevant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Before we wrap up, like I mentioned earlier, this is not an interview, it's a conversation. If anything you want to ask me, you can go for it, and then I'll try my best ability to try to answer.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, rather than ask, maybe I would like to thank you for being a bit, connected to the realities of Bhutan. I think your show really brings out issues that are current, that are relevant in terms of the discussion, and I hope our audience, is able to, understand that we need to think a little bit differently to make the transformation in Bhutan. My only question to you: how do you get the energy to keep doing these podcasts and videos? Where do you find the energy, and where do you find the creativity? What is the one or two things that you tell yourself that, hey, this interview is going to be very different, or this interview is going to be the best one?
Okay. All right. So basically, I'm afraid of untapped potential. I'm afraid of that, but not in a way like, I'm scared. It's like I want to try my best to achieve something, and if I get it, well and good. At least I won't have the regret I didn't try my best. So in terms of my work, content, in terms even of conversation, if today I'm here, I'm going to try to make the best out of this conversation. It's not like I'm going to come here with half a mind and try to just see where it goes. I want to try to make it best as possible. So I also want to make it best for you as well. I want you to be engaged, I want you to converse and then think and stimulate your mind, but I also want the audience to also learn something new and something that should be informative. Because I started this podcast because I was inspired by podcasts. I listened to a lot of podcasts while living abroad. I'm living here, and I learned a lot of new information. It's like, wow, I wish I knew that before. Or like, that's very useful in life. Like, it can be simple things as just by reformatting the way you wake up in the morning, it's just going to have that what we call micro benefit every day for the rest of the year. So it's something small as that. It's very motivating. And then Bhutan being a very spiritual country, and my parents also being very spiritual and very compassionate. They always aspire the values of try to help as much as people you can. And even if you can't help, don't harm. And I feel like information, you can help a lot of people and you can learn a lot of new things. And if I also don't have the energy and I feel like a little lack of energy, then my words may not be as impactful as it could be if I say it in another manner. So maybe that's the way I could answer my questions.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's been great talking to you.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm there if you have a brilliant idea and that needs a little bit of push and a little bit of support, and you know now what we do.
Yeah.
So please come and talk to us.
Okay, sir. I'll make sure.
Yeah, and get hold of us and make us work for Bhutan.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you have any things we can mention, the sir's organization. Maybe we can help. All right, so in the end, we usually do a tradition. So these are little oracle cards. These are oracle cards made by one lady who visited Bhutan. It's all Bhutanized.
Right.
So basically, have you been to any of the hakangs in Bhutan?
No.
No, none of the monasteries?
Yes, monasteries, but I've not gone deeper into it.
So
yeah.
basically, we have a tradition where we go there and we do like I don't know how to say it in English. It's basically you take a die,
Yes.
die, and then you make a aspiration, and then you, depending on the number, it's like, oh, it's good or bad or something like that. I don't know how to say it in English.
I have tried something
Oh, you
in
done it?
Thailand
Okay.
where you shake a thing which has a number of sticks, and then one stick comes out with a number,
Oh, okay.
and then you read. So that's what
similar,
it's
similar.
generic, but it tells you what your future or aspiration
Oh,
is
yeah.
going to be.
So something
I think it's similar.
Something similar. So just like that, these are oracle cards. So you can ask a question to the universe, and then once I hand you the deck, you can shuffle and take out one, and then each card has a meaning. So if you want to share that what the aspiration is, you can share it with us. Otherwise, you can keep it to yourself. But think about something.
Yeah.
Okay. You can just maybe
Any card?
No, hold the deck. Sir.
Okay.
Shuffle it, but then ask the universe a question.
Yes, I have asked the universe the
Okay.
question.
Do you want to share it with us?
I have asked the universe the question, what will it take for the UN and us and me
Okay.
to change the whole dynamic of, getting talent retention
Okay,
in
nice
Bhutan?
question. Great question. Okay, shuffle it around a bit, feel the energy, transfer it, and then pick one, sir.
Let's see what
Okay.
the first card says.
Okay, and you have picked.
Yes. And it's in Dzongkha.
No, it's in English, sir. What is it?
It says purification.
Purification. Okay, purification. Okay, would you? Okay, I'll give you the number. It's 14. Okay, 14. 14. Okay, sir, you can just read it out and then maybe you can all hear it. Yeah, start from the top, sir.
Sure. Bathe in the crystal clear waters, allow them to wash away impurities and negativity, and emerge refreshed and renewed, really to embrace a life of dignity and balance.
There's one more paragraph in the
Yep.
bottom.
Purification signifies cleansing the mind, body, and spirit, removing impurities, to achieve clarity, renewal, and inner peace. This card supports personal growth by inspiring you to embrace positive habits and thought patterns, paving the way for a more balanced and harmonious life.
Do you think that answered your question?
I think so. I
We
mean,
need
it's
to purify.
about it's a lot of inner reflection and looking at things with a new perspective and renewal of energies and inner self and inner peace. So yeah,
Okay,
we have to self-reflect in how we can make that difference.
Okay, sir. All right, thank you. Okay, sir. Towards the end of the podcast, I'm sure. I know you've mentioned so much already, but one last opportunity to look into the camera lens and talk to the audience and anything you want to say. Usually, when we have other guests, like let's say for musical artists, they say, "Please check out my new song or follow me on Instagram." But anything from sir's side or UN side, last chance. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for listening to us. And I would encourage you to visit the UN website and learn more about what we do, and encourage you to participate in the processes that when we do consultations and you see there is a consultation coming up, please put up your hand to make a change in the development journey we do. So I would request you to look us up, and I wish that, we all can together make a difference in the life that we are leading here in Bhutan.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Okay, before we say goodbye again, we need to look up and now say thank you to the podheads. They're all up again. And our podhead pros, Rabsel, Lhendup, Rinzin Wang, Kukumbo Tshomo, Tanin Poops, Elo Bello, Norbu Digital, Karma Zimba, Pema Sandrup, and Susan B. Thank you so much. Okay, it's the end of the episode, sir. Now, do you have in mind what do you want in the background? What would you like in the background? Huh? You have no idea?
We have.
Okay, let me know once it's done. We'll find out.
Yeah.
All right, until the next episode, goodbye. Okay, so we have a tradition where we do one clap. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, last one.
Thank you.